Hey everyone, and welcome back for another deep dive. You know that feeling when you see a book like everywhere you look? And you're kind of like, okay, there's got to be something there.
Mm-hmm.
That's how we felt about this one, Jordan Peterson's 12 Rules for Life.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to lie, it's a dense read. So that's why we're here to pull out those golden nuggets for you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
What did you think?
Well, it's interesting, you know how you said it's everywhere. I mean, this thing started from like a simple question on Quora.
Oh, really?
Yeah, just like, what are the most valuable things everyone should know? And Peterson just kind of went off and it blew up.
Oh, wow.
And it became this whole book.
Mhm.
And I think that says something about us, you know? Like, we're all kind of looking for a little guidance out there.
Yeah, no, totally. Especially in times like these, right? It's like everyone's looking for a life raft. But I got to say, this is not your typical self-help book. Peterson does not shy away from the heavy stuff at all.
No, he doesn't.
It's almost like he embraces the chaos of existence
Yeah.
to help us find our footing. I think that's a great way to put it. He's really big on this whole idea of chaos and order
Okay.
as like this fundamental kind of duality.
Okay.
And he actually argues that, true stability, it's not about eliminating chaos altogether,
Right.
because that's impossible.
He can't escape it.
You can't escape it. You can't like make it all perfectly ordered.
Yeah.
It's more about learning to dance with it.
Okay, so not just cleaning your room, but more like knowing when to clean your room.
Yeah, or like maybe having one foot in structure and one foot in like exploration. He has this one quote where he says, being is composed of two opposing principles, yin and yang, more accurately understood as chaos and order.
I like that. So it's about finding that balance.
Exactly.
Because, I mean, we all crave routine and predictability,
We do.
but too much of it and you're like stifling yourself.
Oh, for sure. You get bored.
You get restless.
It's like if you plan your weekend down to the minute.
Yeah.
And then your friend calls with this totally spontaneous adventure.
Right.
Part of you is like, no, I had to stick to the schedule.
Got to stick to the schedule.
But then the other part is like craving that chaos.
Yeah, like, come on, let's just get out of here.
That break from the norm.
Totally.
And that's Peterson's point.
Yeah.
You need both to be truly balanced,
Okay.
to thrive. You got to have one foot in the chaos and one foot in the order.
So how do we actually do that, though?
Well, that's the big question, right?
Yeah.
Because it's easy to say like, oh yeah, chaos and order, find the balance.
Right.
But how do we actually live that out?
Mhm.
And I think one way is that it shows up in our everyday lives.
Yeah. Okay. How so?
Well, think about something like information overload.
Okay.
Our brains crave order,
Right.
but we are bombarded with chaos all the time.
Constantly.
It's like this never-ending stream of notifications and news and everything.
And social media.
Oh, yeah.
It's like chaos personified.
It really is.
Yeah.
And maybe that's why that whole clean your room thing resonated with so many people.
It's true. It's like a tangible way to create a little order,
Exactly.
like in the middle of all the noise.
Yeah, like if you can just control this one little thing,
Right.
it gives you a sense of agency.
Okay, so it all ties back to that personal responsibility piece.
Exactly. And that's another big theme for Peterson.
But he takes it a step further, though, right?
He does. He doesn't just stop at like having a tidy space.
It's deeper than that.
It's about taking control of your own little corner of the world.
I like that. Your little corner of the world.
Before you go out trying to fix everyone else's,
Oh, that's good.
like get your own act together first.
Okay.
And then you can worry about the rest.
So are you saying, like, check yourself before you wreck yourself?
Pretty much.
Okay, I like that.
He actually uses this example of a client who was always dreaming about relaxing on a tropical beach,
Okay.
but they couldn't even keep their own home in order.
Oh, wow.
Like they were so focused on this fantasy
Yeah.
that they were neglecting their actual reality.
I can totally see that.
Have you ever caught yourself doing that?
Oh, all the time?
Yeah.
Like, I'm a master at fantasizing about some idyllic future.
Right. While conveniently ignoring the pile of laundry in the corner.
It's so easy to do.
It is. It's like our brains are wired for escapism sometimes.
And Peterson would say that's almost like a defense mechanism.
Okay.
We avoid the discomfort of dealing with our immediate reality
Okay.
by escaping into these fantasies.
Interesting.
But as he points out, those dragons under the carpet, they don't just disappear.
No, they don't.
They tend to get bigger the longer we ignore them.
So how do we slay those dragons then?
Well, that's where things get really interesting. And that's where Peterson says you got to kind of turn towards those dragons.
Oh, okay.
Not necessarily slay them, but really understand them.
Okay.
He says, like, confronting those uncomfortable truths about ourselves and about the world,
Yeah.
that's actually the key to growth.
Huh. I never thought of it like that.
It's like instead of running from the chaos, you kind of lean into it a little bit.
Okay, so lean in.
Yeah.
But Truth-telling can be tough.
Whoa, absolutely. It's way easier to avoid those hard conversations.
Right.
Or, tell yourself those little white lies that make things feel better in the moment.
Right, exactly. Like those life lies he talks about.
Oh, yeah, the stories we tell ourselves.
Yeah, to avoid facing the real deal.
Like that person still dreaming about the tropical booch.
Exactly.
Who can't even deal with their own laundry.
Right. But what's so interesting about Peterson is he uses these like kind of random examples sometimes to make these really deep points.
Yeah, like who knew we could learn so much about being human? From lobsters.
Lobsters.
Right? Like what?
Well, he uses them to talk about these dominance hierarchies.
Okay.
They actually have serotonin levels that like go up or down depending on their social status.
No way.
Just like us.
Wow.
And he's not saying that it's a good or bad thing necessarily, but that like understanding these dynamics is essential. If you want to navigate the social world.
It's like you got to know the rules of the game, even if you don't love the game.
Exactly. And I think sometimes those life lies we tell ourselves are to feel better about where we are on that like game board.
You're totally right. So then like where does meaning fit into all of this?
Well, that's where things get really, I think, hopeful. Peterson really emphasizes that finding meaning in life is this antidote to the suffering that inevitably comes with, existing, with being in these hierarchies, with just the whole human experience.
So he's saying it's not about being happy all the time.
Right. It's not about chasing pleasure. It's about finding something that makes the tough stuff worthwhile.
That's a big difference.
Yeah, and, he illustrates this so beautifully with a story about his wife helping this kid at the dinner table who's really struggling.
Oh, yeah.
It's just this simple act of care, but it shows how much meaning it brings.
To both people.
To both people, exactly. And that kind of ties back to the whole setting your house in order thing, those small acts of responsibility.
Even if it's just making your bed in the morning.
Right.
It can like snowball into this greater sense of purpose.
Precisely. And for Peterson, that sense of purpose often comes from embracing responsibility, not shying away from it.
It's interesting, though, because I think a lot of us, when we think about our goals, they can feel so big. Like, where do you even start?
It's overwhelming, right?
Yes.
And he would say, start small.
Okay.
Start with, like, literally or metaphorically cleaning your room.
Okay.
Recognizing that you have agency.
Okay.
You have the power to choose how you're going to respond.
To life's curveballs.
Yes.
Yes.
To life's challenges. To the chaos.
And like each day is a chance to kind of like reset.
Exactly.
And make those small choices that add up.
Yeah, like even just making your bed.
Right.
It's not just about having a tidy room.
Yeah.
It's about that feeling of like, okay, I can do this.
I did that.
I can handle this one thing.
I started my day.
Exactly. And that can then maybe give you the energy.
Yeah.
To tackle something a little bit bigger.
Okay, so it all ties together.
It does. And, it's not all about individual effort either.
Oh, okay, so it's not just all on me.
No. He also talks about the importance of connecting with something bigger.
Okay. Okay, so like community.
Yeah, community, religion, spirituality.
Yeah, those kinds of things.
Traditions.
Yeah.
Rituals.
What does he say about those?
Well, he talks about how, there's been this decline of traditional values and institutions.
Right.
And how that's left a lot of people feeling lost.
Adrift.
Adrift, exactly.
Yeah.
Like without an anchor.
So it's like we're trying to navigate without a compass.
Exactly. And he's not necessarily saying we need to go back to those exact structures.
Okay.
But that we need to find new sources of meaning and belonging.
Okay, I see what it's saying.
That resonate with us today.
So it's almost like we've inherited this this void.
A void.
That we all kind of feel.
And it's up to us to fill it in a way.
Yeah, to find our own path.
And he believes that those compasses, they can be found in many different places.
Okay.
He talks about like looking to the wisdom of the past.
Okay.
Reconnecting with our cultural heritage. Building strong relationships with people who want the best for us.
Who your cheerleaders are.
Yeah, exactly.
That makes sense.
It's like that saying, you can't choose the cards you're dealt.
But you can choose how you play them.
But you can choose how you play them and who you play them with.
And who you play them with.
Yeah, it's a good one.
And that kind of leads us to another really fascinating and often debated aspect of his work.
Okay, what's that?
His views on masculinity and femininity. It's one of those things that always seems to get people talking. And his stance is, it's not black and white.
Yeah, that's definitely nuanced.
He acknowledges the biological differences between men and women, but he kind of pushes back on the idea that, like, masculinity is inherently toxic or anything.
Right.
Or that femininity is, like, inherently virtuous.
Yeah, like it's not one or the other.
Exactly. It's more complex than that.
And he even uses like fairy tales to explore this.
Right. Like, who would have thought?
I remember him talking about Sleeping Beauty and The Little Mermaid.
Yeah, he's using those stories in a psychological context.
Yeah, it's like he's saying, don't just dismiss these as like, you know, childish stories. They actually have these deeper truths in them.
Right, like those archetypes.
About the challenges that men and women face.
Totally. And it's so interesting how he connects all these different things. Like we were talking about lobsters before.
Yeah, totally different worlds.
But then he'll bring in something like fairy tales.
And somehow it all ties together.
It does. And speaking of connections, I was thinking about that story he tells about the gorilla in the basketball game.
Oh, yeah. That's a classic.
Have you heard that one?
Yeah, where they're so busy counting the passes
Yeah.
that they totally miss the gorilla.
Exactly. Like there's a person in a gorilla suit walking right through the middle of the game.
And nobody notices.
And everyone's so focused on the ball.
It's amazing how our brains just tune things out sometimes.
It makes you wonder what we're missing in our own lives because we're so fixated on something else.
It's a good question to ask yourself.
Yeah,
Like, what are my blind spots?
totally.
Mm.
What are those gorillas that are just going right by unnoticed?
And I think that's what Peterson wants us to do, to pay attention.
Yeah.
To really see the world around us.
To be more aware.
Yeah, and to take responsibility for how we move through it.
And that seems to be like the underlying message of the whole book, right?
Yeah, I think you're right.
It's like he's saying, look, life is going to be tough. There's going to be chaos. You can't escape it.
But you have the power to choose how you respond.
Yes, exactly. And that even when things are hard, there's still meaning to be found.
Yeah, he even says that sometimes meaning is found through suffering.
That's a hard one to swallow.
It is.
Especially these days when it's like everyone's trying to optimize for happiness.
Avoid pain at all costs, right?
Yeah, but at the same time, when you look back on your life, it's often those challenging times that taught you the most.
They make you who you are.
And maybe that's why so many people connect with Peterson's work.
It's thought-provoking.
He's not afraid to talk about the big stuff.
The stuff that actually matters.
And he's not giving us these easy answers or telling us what we want to hear.
It's not a quick fix.
But he's giving us a framework.
Yeah.
For navigating the world.
Yeah, a way to make sense of the chaos.
So as we wrap up here, we want to thank you for joining us on this deep dive into Jordan Peterson's 12 Rules for Life.
We've covered a lot of ground.
We have. From lobsters to fairy tales to gorillas and everything in between.
It's a lot to digest.
But if there's one thing we hope you take away from this, it's that this book is really an invitation.
To think deeply.
To ask yourself those big questions.
And maybe even have some uncomfortable conversations along the way.
Because ultimately, it's in those moments of questioning and reflection that we often find the most growth.
And isn't that what it's all about?
That's what we're here for.
So keep exploring, keep asking questions.
And until next time, keep diving deep.